Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We've had, I think, from what I can find, the biggest shock in the World Cup so far. It is the FIDE World Cup 2025. I've got 3 games to show you. I would show you more. There are some fantastic games. I'm kind of studying for an exam tomorrow. So, 3 games. We've got Daniel Barrish's game, who is the only South African that I can find in the field. It is a huge field, 206 players. But he's in there. He made a draw yesterday against a Grandmaster opponent. Today we're going to see if he can score a victory. I've got Faustino Oro's game, and I've got the biggest shock that I can find. International Master taking down a Grandmaster. We start, of course, with my personal bias. Daniel Barrish with the white pieces. He held Raunak Sadhwani to a draw yesterday. Grandmaster Raunak Sadhwani from India. Can he get the win today with the white pieces? He starts with d4. We had knight to f6, c4, e6, and he allows a Nimso Indian defense. Queen to c2, which is the line he chooses. We get c5, all been played before. D takes c5, bishop takes c5. Knight to f3, and they play a bit of theory. The queen comes out, starts putting pressure, e3, bishop to b4, knight dropping back. This line has been played, but you don't see it that often because you get knight to h5. And what happens after you get short castles, bishop to e2, is you get a bunch of exchanges that leaves white with a kind of damaged structure, but attacking possibilities. So we get f5. Black is going to have to develop this bishop somehow. They've got this structure to try and repel everything. White's just going to try and open it up, really. So they get g4. Now, obviously, if you take, you're probably going to hang mate in some form, or at least a huge attack. So we get d6. Simple enough. The knight jumps out to hit the queen. Queen drops back to c7. And now the knight jumps into the center. You can ignore the knight, but Raunak Sadhwani decides to take, which is interesting because you fix the pawn structure, but you do leave this as a weakness. And for the time being, at least, there are no huge attacks. We get e5, breaking in the center. c5. Just huge amounts of tension here. I just watched the final to Survivor. This is what happens at Tribal Council. There is just tension all over the place. E takes d4, e takes d4, and bishop to e6. G takes, bishop takes, and now we block. But we allow rook a8 check. ae8 check, rather. And you can see Daniel's got to make a very interesting move. There's one move on the board that doesn't lose immediately. He's got to have the wherewithal, the cojones, and the guts to play king to f1. Because you obviously cannot drop back with the bishop, you lose your queen. Going to d2 or to d1 is moronic. So he plays king to f1. He plays the best move. We get this trade and h6. Now there's no threat. As you will recall, that was a huge problem. We get c takes, queen takes, and rook h3. And after kind of everything settles, where we bring the rook to defend the pawn, queen slides forward, we play rook to d2, rook to fe4, we slide the king to g1, rook e1 check. This is where I found the game. When he just played d5. Daniel has got this asset that he needs to push up the board. He does, however, have a weak king and a kind of offside rook. So queen to c7 is the last move I saw, and then I had to leave. Now, before I went, I was looking at lines. I was like, okay, what are kind of the main ideas that you want? You don't want to push, because then queen to c6 is hugely problematic for you. You probably want to get this rook to h4. That's probably what I would do, and then it can swing around this way. You can, in some lines, play d6, but then you're inviting a queen trade. So, for example, here, and you have to do this. And this is kind of the line you would have to go down. And this is probably better for black, because this pawn can be blockaded and corralled, and then it's this 2-on-1 on the queen side, which is a huge, huge problem. So, you've got to make the right decisions here. Queen to c7, he chooses to play rook to h4, which is fine, but the best engine move, queen to c1. Now you've got to be brave. You've got to be brave. There's nothing you can do to stop the rook and the queen targeting your king. You just have to be brave and go for a run. Rook to f4. Good move. Rook to h1. King slides over. Queen to g1. King to f3. Rook to h2. The best move in this position is to play king to g4. As I said, you've got to run. You've got to allow checks, but you've got to run. You obviously can't go to the e file, and you can't go backwards. You can also try to play rook to e4 to allow the king to try and run this way. You can also play queen to f5, threatening to infiltrate. He plays the right idea, but the wrong move, because he plays queen to g6. The reason that loses, because the queen had to be on f5, because now there is queen to h1 check. One of two winning moves, but the best move. And what that sets up after king to g4 is rook to h4 check. This is why Raunak Sadhwani is a grandmaster. That move looks silly, right? So king to f5, just by the way, which you can do if you don't want to take the rook, is mate in 3. So king to f5, queen b1, which you would probably have to block. Queen b1, rook slides over, you take. Now there's rook e4, and you take again. The king is boxed in. Can't escape anyway. So you cannot run. You cannot run. You can take the rook. But now there's queen g2. And now king to f5. Rook f8. And you are bust. Because you'll be losing at least your queen. And probably you'll be forced to trade rooks. Bust. He plays king to f5. Raunak Sadhwani misses the win. It's mate in 3. He misses the win. He plays a rook to h5 check. Now, you can see the evaluation. Still minus 12, but missed mate in 3. King slid over, and now rook to g5 check is simple enough. You will be losing the queen. So you can sack the queen, and then you'll play this endgame. So unfortunately, the only South African in the field is out. You no longer have to worry about my biases. Please tell me of any other players you would like me to follow, any nationalities. I want to cover what you want to cover. There are so many players, so many storylines coming out. But man, there are some incredible games. I'm showing you now the biggest upset that I have found so far. That is this game. With the white pieces, Chinese player Shixu Wang. I think I've said that wrong. With the black pieces, Leon Mendonca from India, one of their youngest grandmasters in terms of when he got his grandmaster title, one of their latest print of grandmasters. Young player, full of potential, 2609 rating, IM 2413. Absolutely insane game. It's d4 again, knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to f3 now, not a Nimso Indian defense, but b6, queen's Indian. a3, bishop to b7, knight to c3. This is one of the lines. You play d5. We trade once, and we play e3. Knight takes e3 here. It's always an interesting system. Black has got this option, but you don't always want to do that because queen takes, and then suddenly your rook is a problem. And you want to preserve that bishop. So we get bishop to e7. Now with the check, forcing c6 and coming back. Why? Because now they've got a choice. They've got to push the pawn forward again. And it's a waste of a tempo. Short castles, and now you see c5. Waste of a move. e4, queen to c7, h4. You got to go for it. Otherwise, you're going to get to tiebreaks tomorrow. Rook to d8, queen to e2, sliding just out of the path of this rook, which can be problematic. h6, bishop to b2, knight to d7. The players are maneuvering and getting their pieces all set. No huge fireworks expected. The next few moves are played quite quickly. Rook a1, rook ac8, rook fe1, knight f8, which looks a bit silly, but makes sense. Luke did have to think about this, but he's going to bring his knight this way, or he's preparing e5, or he's just opening up the rook to put pressure. h5, though. Now you can't go to g6. Okay, what if I play bishop to f6, putting pressure? Well, I can play bishop to b1. Rook to d7, but I can play e5. The bishop slides over, and now I can bring my knight out, and now I've got a simple plan. Boop, boop. Simple plan. f5. And look at this move. I take en passant, the best move. Because bishop takes f6, I can put my knight in. And it is causing you massive problems, and that is going to be a hole that your knight now has to defend. Bishop takes, queen takes, uh-oh. Now, knight on f8, never mate, is a good saying, but my gosh, that knight is having to do some double duty. Rook c, d8, now still putting pressure. But look at that. Bishop to a2. C takes d4. I take back. C takes d4. Rook to d6. Defends. I can double. Rook to d3. Queen d7 loses now. Because I can do what you thought was impossible. I can push the pawn. I can push the pawn. And there's nothing you can do. The bishops interact with each other. So you might say, oh, easy. Boom. No. D takes e6. Hits the queen. And anyway the queen moves, if the pawn's able to move, there's a discovered check. So the queen, you might say, has to blockade. But I can just play rook takes d6. And if rook takes d6, I have queen b4. Oops. Huge problems. Because let's say you defend the bishop. I can play queen takes d6. Here, boom. And I take, or I push and make a queen. Absolutely incredible. Unfortunately, going down that incredible line, it's missed. And we get rook ed1. Queen comes out now to b5, and now Shixu, I don't think I'm pronouncing the right, turns on the jets. Bishop to c3. Getting out the way, allowing a5, and now d5 comes. And it's even more potent because there's no queen to blockade. You can push, but now I have a4, queen e8, bishop back to b2, queen takes h5. Uh-oh. Bishop to a3, you're running into problems. You're defending. You're not defending well enough. Rook to c1, and now look at that, rook to h3. I'm attacking on every side of the board. I am attacking you on every side of the board. The position is untenable. Queen to g5, and now look at that. Rook to c7. What can you do? Queen to d2, posing problems. They're not posing enough problems. Bishop to b3. Bishop to f8 is a last defensive resource. And now we miss a couple of wins, which might be important because you play rook to f3, which is not the clinical way to finish this. The way you finish this is to be forceful. Bishop takes d6. Bishop takes d6. Rook to g3. Leave that rook to hang, because if you take, queen to g6 is mate in 3, mate in 5. Rook to f3 is a miss. You need to be forceful. Take the rook first. Knight to f6 gives the chance back. Queen takes e5, misses it again. The best move here is queen to g6, because you're going to go back with the rook and mate. Queen takes f5 is not quite what we had in mind. Rook slides over. Now maybe. Queen trade. Nope, queen e1 check. Can't trade queens. Rook e4. Now look at that move. Look at the move on the board. Look at this. Look at that. If you take my queen, I take your queen. And I still have the benefits of my entire position. Not to mention I'm picking up this rook just when I want it. Absolutely incredible. Rook c1 was played. Same idea, not quite the same execution. Queen e2, And now we get in. Bishop takes. Rook takes, bishop takes. I've sacked my queen for 2 pieces, and they're going to be enough because bishop to c5 is not fast enough. Check, king to h7, rook d1. Knight comes forward with check, king to g3. Knight takes f2, we push. And Leon Mendonca goes down. He fights, but this move, bishop to c2, everything's pinned. Bishop c2 is the final nail in the coffin. We grab this, we slide out the check, and we infiltrate bishop to e5. The hugest of upsets. 200 rating points. Whew. If you found a bigger upset, let me know. I've been looking. I can't find any, but maybe I just haven't looked hard enough because I am also studying. But now we need to go to 2 players who will go into the day drawn as well. And again, same situation. If someone is able to win, then they don't have to come tomorrow to play tiebreaks. If no one wins, they are here tomorrow to play tiebreaks. And it is, of course, the Messi of chess, Faustino Oro, with the white pieces. We're checking in on his game. He held a beautiful draw yesterday, and he's playing against the Sicilian defense. Now, these are known for fireworks, and he plays knight to c3, the closed Sicilian. You don't see this a lot at top level. Knight to c6, knight to f3, e6, and now d4, and we kind of transition to an open Sicilian, and I don't care anymore. C takes d4, knight takes, knight to f6, a3, almost like a reverse Najdorf kind of thing, not really. d6, bishop to e3, bishop to e7, bishop to e2, short castles, queen d3, bishop to d7, f4, e5, takes, short castles. This is the position they have to navigate, the middle game. Incredibly complex. So black has this open b file that they will use to try and put pressure. Both sides have 2 bishops. White has given up their d-pawn, as they always do in the Sicilian, but will look for compensation in striking in the center. So they first play e takes f4 from black, bishop takes, and now look at that, bishop to e6. Obviously, this is not possible at the moment, but you're now defending this, and your bishop's a little bit more open. King to h1 gets out the way of anything nasty coming here, any forks, because that would be hanging. Now knight to e8, which looks silly, but you're rerouting the knight. Rook ad1, bishop to f6, targeting the knight and the pawn behind it. We play e5, just shutting the door, because you can't take. Which is actually what happens. You can't take. It's crazy. Queen takes d8, rook takes, bishop takes d8. Bishop takes, e5. Important here that you take with the bishop. But how is this a Grandmaster game? 4 of the pieces are on the back rank. Grandmaster chess for you. Bishop to f6. And now we don't trade. We want to trade on our terms, which black is happy to do. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you know where this is going. We're in a minor piece endgame. You know, rook and pieces. As Faustino reroutes his knight quite beautifully to c5, where it will be untouched for the remainder of the game. These bishops just continue to stare at each other. Probably black is happy to keep them on, because their knight's not as well placed as this giant on c5. But bishop takes f3, and we get rid of them. And now you've got to play a rook endgame. So rook e1 check, forces king to h2, and now we double on the file, which is good. We also double, so now you cannot get creative here because you will hang mate. So h5. Bold move, but important. We now look to trade off a set of rooks and h4. You can take. I will probably take back with my rook. I might take back with my knight even. So takes, rook takes e8, king to g1, rook e2, c4. Knight to h5. Black has got one idea. I'm coming in here, and I'm going to try and wreck and destroy and force maybe a perpetual check. White probably has the advantage because their 3-on-2 is more powerful than black's 3-on-2. Because the kings are kind of here and can defend, and these pawns are split. So black is relying on quick counterplay to get a perpetual. So check, king to h7. We look to attack, but f5. I'm happy to push it forward. You can grab this. Now white is definitely winning, if not for knight to f4. King has to run. I slide my rook over, and I pick up a pawn. I don't trade knights. I bring the king out, and now it's a matter of technique and getting everything right. Look at that. Now whose knight's better? Your knight got evicted from c5 by your own admission because you have to come defend your king. King runs forward, check. f4 check. King slides over, check, check, and it's a box. And you can't escape. And eventually, we're going to trade off the pieces, and we're going to get to a rook endgame, which is going to be incredibly hard for either team to win. Look at the GM, though. You would have said Faustino was under pressure. Look at the king that was just isolated here on the back rank, fly to the center of the board. The pawns all come up, well defended, and white just never made any progress. I was talking about that beautiful knight, the rook, and all the coordination. Nothing materialized for white. Black was so fast with the counterplay. Rook takes a3. Now we trade off a set of pawns. White can take this at any moment if they're not being checked. They can't really come forward because they will lose their pawns. So we get here. Now we do have a split 2v2, which would be better for white, but they've got to worry about this pawn. That is the huge problem that black has now created. And Faustino's under pressure, but he marches his king forward, and his king covers everything. The black king can't get close enough, and eventually we get here, and this is a draw, because black would take here, and the game is over. 69 move draw, which is a nice number. We still went 21 minutes, which is longer than I anticipated. Tie breaks tomorrow for Faustino Oro, for Arturas Nixans, for a whole lot of players. But it was a very, very entertaining day. And I look forward to tomorrow and the day after that when the super players get involved. They got buys in round 1. Let me know who you want me to cover. Excited to learn about new players all the time.